The Jesus Music is a documentary directed by the Erwin Brothers, who are also a part of other feature films such as I Can Only Imagine, American Underdog, I Still Believe, and the upcoming film Jesus Revolution. This movie creates an appreciation on what these singers do as artists, give details about their backstories on how some of them become famous, and what happened during their careers. It also explores the idea of what this movie means by Jesus music and how it impacted some, while others took it in as either lame or heretical. The documentary doesn't go into the lives of all of the musicians shown in the movie, but does highlight a lot of key important factors of why Christian music, as it is right now, was very important back then, and even if we don't care for their taste in music, it still shows the kind of respect we should treat it to today. So as for my thoughts on the movie, I like to start out by saying this. It's tough to do criticism on the documentary because it's not like a regular film. You would either have to know exactly what's going on inside the movie in order to understand everything, which requires research and background knowledge, or you can take the film as it is and not worry about anything no matter if its facts are correct or not. The problem with that, though, is you can't really do film criticism if you don't know what it's saying is right or wrong. So if a movie is either being incorrect with its facts or manipulating you into thinking about something that's not true, that can be a problem. But then again, sometimes with documentaries, you would like to see it if it does give you something interesting that would at least make you think. I, however, didn't do any research to see if what they're talking about in here is true or not, so I'm just taking these people's words as their own, and for what they showed, it looked genuine, interesting, and I think it's a good introduction to a movie that the Erwin Brothers have made, and will be released in the future featuring Jonathan Roumie as Lonnie Frisbee, which is honestly perfect casting since he is playing the role of Jesus in The Chosen, and Lonnie has apparently gotten some criticism for looking like Jesus. I think that this movie doesn't hold them up on a pedestal as if they're the most heartfelt people in the music business. Sometimes these musicians talk about why they're not as perfect as they seem and how some of their fame unfortunately became a disaster on their own doings. The movie doesn't hold all of these singers as perfect do-gooders and we should pat them on the back because they're Christian. Some of these musicians have done and acted irrationally and we see some of their irresponsibility when reacting to the public of their band partners. But then again, there is a slight ego when saying that some of their music was some of the best off the charts, and I don't recall some of their songs being the greatest, but I guess in the Christian community it would make sense, not in the general spectrum of music all around though. I'm not really big on some of their music, honestly. Sometimes they can all sound the same. I do enjoy Skillet and a little bit of Black Sabbath's Christian songs, but Newsboys I really don't care for. They just sound generic. If you like most of these musicians, fine, but they're not really for me. This film is mostly aimed at people who love these bands and would like to see more of their backstory of how they got to where they are today, and for what the film does, it does its job all fine and good. But enough reviewing the movie. What's my theological takeaway? As I was watching the movie, this film talked about something that I did not really think about that much when discussing the genres of music, and I'm surprised that I did take this for granted because I'm a guy that understands music is supposed to be an art. In art, there's no such thing as something that's objectively perfect. The reason why there are a variety of genres in the music business is because everybody has different taste preferences to what they enjoy or how they become impacted by a particular song. In short, if a song has decided to bring a person closer to God, motivate them to read the Bible, and be in a relationship with Jesus, the kind of genre they bring into their music should not matter if we don't like it or if we feel uncomfortable with it. Now, I'm not talking about lyrics to music that want to change God the way he is and draw people away from the Bible and indulge in sin. Obviously, there would be a problem with that. What I'm talking about is the genre, where we have rock and roll music, guitar riffs, have music that does tell a story with some creative licenses, but honor God and Jesus while not just being straight up word for word the Bible. Some people would find the taste of rock and roll to be immature and ruthless, but others find it to be fun and also inspiring. I talked about this before, but if one person is able to convey an attachment to a song, it won't automatically be the same to another because aesthetic truths are never absolute. What works for one person won't automatically be the same to another. Romans chapter 14 verse 1 through 3 says this: "Accept other believers who are weak in faith, and don't argue with them about what they think is right or wrong. For instance, one person believes it's alright to eat anything, but another believer with a sensitive conscience will eat only vegetables. Those who feel free to eat anything must not look down on those who don't. and those who don't eat certain foods must not condemn those who do, for God has accepted them. In the Jesus music, they talked about the idea of music being labeled into specific categories, and now these artists are being attached to specific stereotypes. For example, if it's rock and roll, you're giving the devil a foothold, or if you're talking and spreading about love and peace, you're making Christianity look like a place for freaky people and you need to straighten up. We can talk about how specific kinds of music don't interest us and what we rather prefer, but apparently because we get so caught up on what we don't like, we declare it as bad for the Christian community only because of what we believe it to be and how we feel about it, rather than taking it in for what it is and seeing why other people who have listened to it become attached to it. If things don't go the way we would want them to be, us as a community will then transform into us versus them dichotomy, and we instead mostly want to focus on what we dogmatically believe rather than what's known to be true. If they like this and are not like me, they should stay away from me. We need to be very clear that God does not come in support of favoritism. James chapter 2 verse 1 through 4 says this: "My brothers, show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory. For if a man wearing a gold ring and fine clothing comes into your assembly, and a poor man in shabby clothing also comes in, and if you pay attention to the one who wears the fine clothing and say, 'You sit here in a good place,' while you say to the poor man, 'You stand over there,' or 'Sit down at my feet,' have you not then made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts?" Now, to end this off, I would just like to make one final note. One, seeing the music as an escapism of what God can be like when in actuality it isn't, is a bad thing. What you would truly need is Jesus and not the music, because using the music solely by itself is mostly idolatry. It's great to enjoy music, but don't let that become your God when you should get attached to the real deal. I like that this movie goes into discussion of that when talking about Striper, rock and roll bands consuming drugs and getting drunk, people who were hooked on LSD, and the film talked about this dude, Lonnie Frisbee, who they call a hippie, convinced them that it was Jesus that they actually needed and not the drugs. Just a reminder to show everyone that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, mostly because of their style and act are different and it makes us uncomfortable. The same goes for music genres. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you see here, be sure to click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell right beside the subscribe button to be notified for future videos, and let me know in the comment section below what did you think of the movie and what would you like for me to do as a theological analysis next.